I've called this EP Black and Classical because it's an EP of classical music written by African American women, played by a black woman myself. The pieces are Clouds by Florence Price, Troubled Water by Margaret Bonds, and Seasonal Sketches by Betty Jackson King. So I've chosen these composers because of the unique music that they wrote. It's classical music that carries African heritage sounds within it. They are also three remarkable women who stood against the racism and the misogyny of their time. I chose these pieces because of the stories and the meaning behind the music. It's great to play their music, but it's also good to tell their stories. Florence Price, who was rejected so much by the classical music establishment, but just kept going, just kept believing in herself, never gave up. Clouds by Florence Price is very symbolic. In African American art, a cloud is a symbol for freedom, the idea that you can't catch a cloud, you can't pin it down. We have to remember that Florence Price was born only 2 years after the abolition of slavery in America, so her parents would have been born in to slavery. So this symbol of freedom is also in the music, the way she writes it. It's in a classical structure, but she writes it like one ongoing improvisation, as if she just sat down on the piano and just poured it out. She's coming at it with a classical skill, but she's using a slightly jazz-influenced mindset to represent freedom. Margaret Bonds was a civil rights activist. She used to write music for the famous poet Langston Hughes, who Martin Luther King used to quote in his speeches. Troubled Water by Margaret Bonds. So that's based on the Negro spiritual Wade in the Water, which of course is based on the Bible story of Moses leading the Israelites out of slavery across the Red Sea and into freedom. Black slaves in America would sing Wade in the Water when they were picking cotton in the fields. The first time I purchased the music for Seasonal Sketches by Betty Jackson King, sat down on the piano, decided it through. I had to stop halfway through because I felt like I was going to start crying. And I'm not hugely emotional like that, so I shocked myself and I took just a minute or two to process, why do I feel this way? And I think it's because even though it's classical music, it's written in Chicago decades and decades and decades before I was around, it does carry these musical influences of black heritage in it. For me, it kind of brought me back to my childhood. I was brought up in classical music, but I have a natural affinity towards jazz as well. When traditional classical music listeners hear this EP, they will hear a really unique sound because it's this fusion of classical with black heritage sounds. They'll get something new, but they'll also have something that they're familiar with because there's also influences of Debussy in it and Chopin and Rachmaninoff alongside jazz and blues and Negro spiritual. This EP carries a story of hope and power. The music, particularly by Margaret Bonds and Florence Price, was composed to empower their community in their day, their black community. I hope that the stories behind the composers that you're listening to in this film will inspire people today, will inspire you to believe in yourselves, not to give up, to be who you are without compromise, and to fulfill and achieve your potential. This recording is releasing for Black History Month 2024, which is October. I'm releasing this for Black History Month because classical music has had a perception that it's elitist and exclusive. But this EP proves classical music has a place in Black history, and Black history has a place in classical music. As a Black classical musician, I'm thrilled to make a contribution to Black History Month. Streamed on Spotify, Apple, Adagio and Amazon. If you want to hear it a couple of weeks prior to that, you can find it on Bandcamp, buy it on Bandcamp, or you can pre-order the CD from my website.